Hello, and welcome to channel Ein Our Key, and I am your host, Voluntary. This election is worrisome to me because yet another line has been crossed. Yes, lots of lines have been crossed over the last few decades, and it may seem redundant to say it yet again, but I want to talk about this particular line. I'm not worried about the court fights over who might win, and I'm not worried about who might win. But there is an aspect of this that has particularly caught my attention. It is said that the president runs in the economy, and even if he had nothing to do with it, a president with a good economy is more likely to be reelected, and a president with a bad economy is more likely to lose. Up until the COVID crisis, the economy under Trump was doing surprisingly well. It was actually doing much better than I expected, and that left me wondering why it was doing so well. Then COVID arrived, and panicky politicians started shutting everything down, and therefore the economy went into a nosedive. As the restrictions wore on, and 2 weeks grew into 3 months, some states started to react otherwise and lift the restrictions. People started complaining that there was no cost-benefit analysis on the restrictions. By that, I certainly don't mean how much is a life worth, but instead, if it saves just one life from COVID, it doesn't matter how many people die from other causes. Remember the phrase, if it saves just one life. The more you pay attention to it, the more you will notice the people saying it don't actually care about the lives they are alleging to save. It doesn't matter how many people die from a downturned economy if it saves just one life from COVID. It doesn't matter how many people die from inability to access necessary non-COVID health care, or suffer from malnutrition, or the inevitable suicides that come with any economic downturn, if it saves just one life from COVID. Well, the restrictions end. On the one hand, since it looks like Trump will be gone, the reason for overhyping COVID will be gone. Therefore, the restrictions can go away. On the other hand, Biden's campaign has issued a promise that there would be a 3-month nationwide mask mandate. That, combined with what appears to be threats of a second wave, indicate the distinct possibility of greater restrictions on the national level, shutting down businesses and destroying livelihoods. And I see a reason for this. Actually, several reasons. But there is one reason I want to talk about. Some states lifted the shutdowns before others. And those states started doing well economically compared to those that didn't. And yes, there is a political bias to which states reopened, and it isn't the same as the states that supported Biden. When shutdowns are determined on a state level, states can compete with each other over issues like this. When policy is determined on the federal level, those states that would prefer to open earlier aren't able to. It levels the playing field and punishes those states that have successfully reopened. The money that could be used to reinvest has been used to reinvest, and now it is lost. Now, as I pointed out, some states did make the cost-benefit analysis and decided it was time to reopen. Other states remained closed. And then some of them, I am sure, but cannot prove, decided to remain closed so as to prevent an economic recovery. It is subtle, but there is the line. The governments of the most solidly Democrat states, the ones that kept their economies closed in order to depress the national economy, have shown they are willing to sacrifice their own people in order to advance their political goals. This isn't the same as the willingness to kill foreigners and to sacrifice troops to advance political careers. Nor it is the standard abuse of creating crimes out of nothing so that criminals can be punished. This is the outright sacrifice of the people, and not even for the benefit of a politician, but a political agenda. I think back to the 2008 election. Texas was making the usual noise, empty threats of secession. I was talking to a particularly noxious individual, and he was fiercely opposed to such an action. I pointed out to him that if Texas did leave, then they would guarantee an electoral college victory for the Democrats for the foreseeable future, as it would be impossible for any Republican to win without Texas. This was not good enough for him. He was ahead of the curve, and his desire wasn't simply that his side win. He also wanted the other side to lose. He didn't just want to live under laws he approved of. He wanted to enforce those laws on those who disagreed with him. He wanted to have gun owners disarmed. He wanted to have religious pay taxes to fund abortions. It wasn't enough that he get what he wanted for himself. His version of victory was to force his will on others. He was ahead of the curve by about 12 years. These days, it isn't enough to win. It is important that the other side lose. There is also another line. It isn't crossed yet, but it is in view. I can see the line from here. This also references the 2008 election. I wondered publicly if outgoing President George W. Bush might finally face some repercussions for what I saw as his war crimes. I was told that isn't the way things are done in our civilized first world countries, that you don't put your political opponents on trial, that the election is a sufficient reward or punishment. That's also why I am not surprised that Donald Trump did not lock her up. It made a great slogan, but it would have surprised me had he actually followed through. The current rhetoric about how charges should be filed against Donald Trump seems more serious. And there is indeed a chance that it could happen should Joe Biden win. Of course, these charges are very politically motivated, which is why losing political opponents aren't charged in many countries absent very serious crimes. It is even why Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon, to avoid having the United States descend into a situation where a losing political opponent is brought up on charges. Even those who are more moderate, such as Robert Reich and Alexandria Cortez, who in, no other way could be considered moderate, are advocating making lists of those who are guilty of the crime of supporting Donald Trump. Sacrificing your own people is very bad. Bringing up politically motivated, fabricated charges against a defeated opponent is very bad. Enemy lists to publicly shame your opponents are very bad. I should not have to say any of those, but they are issues in the United States today. Although I'm not overly worried about who wins in general, I'm very worried about the steps taken to get to victory and the response some might have to victory. Thank you for watching. We're now in the double digits for subscribers, and hopefully we will only keep growing. So please like, share, comment, and subscribe to help my channel grow.